So you have a little bit of work to be doing, as all school superintendents do. You've made
Right.
some decisions, though, about what school will look like in the fall. Tell us what you've decided.
Yeah, so this wasn't randomly done. We looked at what the guidance that was issued by the CDC, OSHA, the Michigan's state opening plan, looked closely at the American Federation of Teachers document, AFT, and tried to put all of that together based on the reality that COVID has disproportionately impacted Detroit in the Black community. So we knew that our plan had to be deeper, had to have more protections in it, more safety features than, let's say, districts up north or even to the west of Detroit. And so this is a collection of our best thinking based on the research that's out there, the medical best practice. And now it's about engaging stakeholders internally, externally about how they feel about it. Where are we right? Where are we missing the mark? What needs to be adjusted? What needs to be added? And so far, the conversations have been positive. I think people recognize that this plan does look different from what they've seen from other districts, but that doesn't mitigate the fact that folks are full of anxiety, especially our most veteran teachers. They're worried about coming back, and they have legitimate reasons to worry because they're in a health category that's more at risk. But I think what I've been saying is we can't start the conversation with no, and we can't end the conversation with no. So what do we do differently? What do we do better to make you feel more at ease? Because our children have to have face-to-face instruction.
Yeah. So let's talk about the nuts and bolts of how that will work in the fall and how it's maybe a little different, as you point out, from some other districts.
Yeah, so I think some distinguishing differences would be, one, our employees will have to be tested. So everyone will be COVID tested before they return to the building. That's instructional staff, administrators, support staff. Secondly, we're planning on taking temperature checks as folks come into the workplace, including schools, children included. That will be different. We're going to have students and employees take a self health check linked to the symptoms of COVID. That'll be done through an app that will be submitted daily. That probably will feel different. I think those are the distinguishing points. Beyond that, I think that's when we get in territory where things will be similar. So smaller class sizes, not eating in the cafeteria, not exchanging classes, setting up cleaning stations or sanitation stations where students and employees will have ready access to sanitizer, making sure that our bathrooms are fully supplied. We're going to establish a hotline and an email address so that employees, students, parents can submit complaints or concerns in an anonymous way, so there's no fear of retribution. We can address those issues. We're going to deeply clean every night. We're going to leave a note of a checklist of everything that was done to assure folks that it was clean. So those are some features that I think other districts will have. But as I said, there are some things that we're going to do differently.
Yeah. One of the things that I worry about, and this is not just in Detroit, I think lots of communities deal with this same dynamic, although of course we have more of it in Detroit, is the ability of parents to be able to adapt to a school week, for instance, that's not 5 days, right? A lot of people count on school for, among other things, taking care of their kids while they're at work. Do you worry that this will play out really differently for families in Detroit?
Yeah, that's we were sensitive about that in creating the reopening plan. That's one reason why we don't intend to go to a hybrid schedule for our K-5s and K-8s. So we are expecting school every day, Monday through Friday. We typically go 7 to 7.5 hours, so we may shorten a day to 6 hours. But we are going to have school every day. And we thought about that because of the siblings reality. A lot of our parents have multiple children at different grade levels. And so it would be maddening to think about, well, the kindergartner has to go to school on Monday, but the fourth grader doesn't go until Tuesday. That would be too much of a hardship on our parents as they're, trying to get to work every day, sometimes working 2 to even 3 jobs. So we don't want to burden them in that area. But some of our large high schools may have to rely on a hybrid schedule on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday basis. There'll be day-to-day teaching, but not all students in the building at once. Just schools like Cass, Western, Renaissance are too big to have that many students in the building, at least preliminarily in the fall. That might change if things continue to improve from a COVID perspective, but right now we're just not comfortable with that in the fall. So we're also better positioned as a district because of the Connected Futures investment. The $20 million and every student having a device and internet access does level the playing field for us, so that if we have a second wave, we can go to online learning and continue the regular curriculum with grades. The devices and internet access also allows us to think differently with large rooms. So we could have lots of students in a cafeteria or in a gym if it's not being a media center, and having them spread out, but on a device so they can hear the instruction that's happening in a classroom, but in that larger setting. That allows us to reduce the number of students in a classroom at once. But you're going to see at the elementary and K-8 level, more pull out academically for small groups in literacy and math. And on the positive side, more recess breaks, more physical activities, pulling students out for art and music. So in some ways, I'm actually thinking that we might actually have more intentionality, more focus than we've ever had before, because we have to work things differently. I saw in Florida, when schools had to respond to shutdowns because of hurricanes, there was this renewed energy, sense of urgency that happened when children came back. And I'm not trying to spin this. I just think optimistically that there's a new renewed focus and intentionality about what we do, because we haven't had our children face to face for almost 6 months now.
Yeah.
It'll be 6 months.
You've also made some changes to the way that teachers are going to be paid. Importantly, raising the salaries for starting teachers, young teachers. That's been such a long time coming. That's
been one of our greatest challenges in reforming the district, is being fully staffed. So as you know, we started with 275 vacancies when we started. When we started this last year, 1920, we were down to 70, but 70 is still too many. And as we go into this year, knowing that we have to reduce class sizes, it's even more important that we're fully staffed and we recruit a surplus of teachers. So at 51,000, we are the most competitive school district now in Metro Detroit.
Before I let you go, I want to talk about something I saw on social media. You speaking out about the demonstrations that we're seeing across the country and the issues that are inspiring those demonstrations, and then I guess you got a little pushback from some people about it, and you talked about just how fragile some people's sense of themselves is in the light of discussions about race and racism and inequality.
Yeah, so for me, married to a Black woman and having biracial children and leading DPSCD, I live race, every day. You can't do this work. I can't be me if you're not dealing with issues of race. But I think for our country, there's an awareness, there's a conversation that normally doesn't happen in the white community. And I've always had those, folks call them challenging, difficult conversations with people, but people are talking more about it, and I think that's positive. But I have seen this knee-jerk reaction to the conversation about race, specifically the issue of whiteness and white privilege. It's clear that white America views this conversation as a zero-sum game, that unfortunately, as the Black community or allies of the Black community talk about equal rights, racial injustice, racial justice, police brutality, the conversation seems to always shift to well, and it's not said directly, but if we're going to do that, I lose something, or what about me? I worked hard to get what I received, and it's never a conversation about what it means to be privileged in this country by being white, and what it means to be at a disadvantage and discriminated against because of the color of your skin. And that's a difficult conversation for white America, and it's scary how we see that leveraged politically, for example, and we've seen that for decades, but especially with our president right now, where racial tension, which is real, racial misunderstanding, which is real, is manipulated and used in order to maintain power, increase power, and to gain votes instead of having a real conversation about whiteness, privilege, and discrimination. We divide people. And I think some folks on the other side think, well, we're dividing people by talking about race. No, we're talking about truth or reality and what needs to happen differently. We can have that conversation and it not be a zero-sum game. People having equal rights and their human rights affirmed isn't about taking something away from the white community. It's giving something to the Black community that's just naturally deserved, that has been taken away. But that's what I was speaking to regarding that tweet, and it just speaks to how much farther we have to go as a country, and how we need federal leadership to bring us together, not divide us. And we haven't had that in 4 years, and it's only gotten worse because it's manipulated and it's used to divide us.